Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's your boy Devvon, and welcome to another Help Me Devvon tutorial. And today, in this Help Me Devvon tutorial, I'll be showing you guys a technique on how to clean up those muddy, dull, or unexciting vocals in your mix in under a minute. So let's start the clock. Let's clean up those vocals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press play, and I'm just going to start EQing. Check this out. I can't get over you. It's hard to start over with somebody new. I feel like this conversation is overdue. Know you feel this way cause I've been stalking you. Your IG and some of our friends. Who are these that you be talking to? You just using them to pass the time. I've been in these streets, I've been running through these girls, but they lose my mind. So can we finally come to terms, girl, you earned it. Okay, now let's bypass that back and forth while it's in the context of a mix. Check this out. I can't get over you. It's hard to start over with somebody new. I feel like this conversation is overdue. Know you feel this way cause I've been stalking you. IG and some of our friends. That is a huge difference. And that's under a minute. And that's me basically getting rid of that mud, adding some clarity, even getting rid of some harshness and some of the sibilance sound that I'm getting out of the vocal. This is the HMD Rosetta EQ from our company, HMD at Help Me Devvon. I'll leave a link in the description below if you want the EQ. I'm going to walk you through my process and my thoughts as far as getting that vocal to stay clean, brighten it up, make it more clear and more felt, and helping it cut through the mix, kind of how we just did there. Now, please make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. It would really help us a lot. And like I said, HMD Rosetta EQ is in the link in the description below. It's our plugin. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through a little bit of my process. So let's solo the vocal by itself. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bypass this vocal back and forth after all that EQing and get an idea of what happened as far as the difference with a more focused context without the music there. So without first. I can't get over you. It's hard to start over with somebody new. I feel like this conversation is overdue. So that's a huge difference. I can even hear now that I'm having solos that I can bring back some of that body or warmth in the vocal because I thinned it out just a bit, obviously listening and doing it quick in the context of the music and not taking my time. But check this out. Let's add a little bit of warmth back into this. I can't get over you. It's hard to start over with somebody new. Now let's bypass that back and forth again without first. I can't get over you. It's hard to start over with somebody new. I feel like this conversation is overdue. Still feels really strong, but now it just has a little bit more clarity. Of course, there's other things we're going to attack with this vocal as far as the sibilance and things of that nature, but we did mitigate some of that stuff, including the harshness within this. I'm going to walk you through some of the parameters that I'm using to accomplish this really quickly and just going right to it and just really speeding up my entire workflow as far as what I'm looking for out of the sound. I also hear that, sure, I could back off on a few things as well, but that's with a more intimate feeling as far as taking your time and doing that. But nonetheless, you could do this really fast using the HMD Rosetta EQ, my favorite EQ from a basic standpoint. Okay, cool. So let's go through some of the parameters that we have here. So long story short, the first thing I did was roll off some of that low end. So what I'll do is I'll copy my settings. I'll put it back to its default. And now I'll go to the subtractive side and let's roll off some of the low end. I can't get over you. It's hard to start over with somebody new. So I used a low cut to basically get rid of some of that low end rumble that I was getting in the vocal. I wanted that gone. It's also helping me to retain some more headroom as I don't need any of that information there. So I'm just rolling it off. Some people will argue that they don't like to use low cuts and things of that nature. This is not for this video. We'll explain it another day, but just know I just wanted to roll off a little bit of low end on my vocal just to get rid of it. I don't need it. And that is not always the case. Sometimes you can leave it alone. But for this case, I just showed you. I just wanted to roll off some of that stuff. Okay. Next thing I did was I rolled off some of the muddy. the mud out the vocal, which this particular frequency range is around that 250 hertz range, where I feel that kind of boominess or that cloudiness that I typically can feel in a vocal. So I'm going to exaggerate and back off. I can't get over you. It's so hard to start over with somebody new. I feel like this conversation is overdue. Know you feel this way cause I've been stalking you. Great. So I got a little bit of that muddiness that was clouding up my vocal out the way, and I could actually boost the volume now that I've taken some of that stuff out to compensate for the volume loss. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'll leave it right there. So that's kind of what the muddy knob does as far as removing some of that stuff. I removed some of the low end, as well as I cleaned up some more of the kind of lower mids, if that makes any sense, in that 250 hertz range, and got rid of that stuff as well. So I'm going to put this back to 0 so we could just hear the differences with the actual sound sources that we're using. So the next thing we're going to do is I moved over to the harshness. And this is pretty important to me. And this frequency range is about that 3.5 kilohertz range. I wanted to get rid of some of that harshness before I went any further as far as going down a lot of mixing, because this is the frequency range that sometimes I typically hate. It hurts my ear. It's fatiguing, especially when I'm trying to get something loud later down the line when it comes to mastering or things of that nature. So this is just one of those frequency ranges that I typically kind of reach for to kind of say, I want less of that. So that's what we're going to do. Let's remove some of that harshness that I'm hearing in the vocal. So I'm going to exaggerate and back off. I can't get over you. It's so hard to start over with somebody new. I feel like this conversation is overdue. Okay, let's bypass back and forth without first. I can't get over you. It's so hard to start over with somebody new. I feel like this conversation is overdue. So it just helps to mitigate that 3.5 kind of kilohertz range and kind of back off on that harshness so it's not so harsh and fatiguing on my ear. So those combinations so far sum up to just giving me a vocal that's a little bit more concise in the sense of just easier to listen to, and uncovering it as well, because I'm taking off some of the mud, some of the low end as far as the low cut is concerned, and just getting rid of that 3.5 kilohertz that's destroying my ear and ripping it to pieces. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll roll up the low cut as well as the muddy just a bit, and let's hop on over to the additive side. Now this is the additive EQ that I brought into the vocal, and I use the air and clarity knobs primarily to give me some more clarity and air out of the vocal. I mean, this EQ is pretty self-explanatory. It's why it's my favorite from a basic standpoint. So I'm going to add some air to the vocal. I can't get over you. It's so hard to start over with somebody new. Now, bypass back and forth without first. I can't get over you. It's so hard to start over with somebody new. I feel like this conversation is overdue. So it just giving me some of that top end. It's basically a shelf that is allowing me to add air to the vocal in that upper range as far as the frequency spectrum is concerned. It's really nice. It's really simple, and it's allowing me to just have that feeling of intelligence and brilliance and just clarity in the vocal. Now, moving on to the clarity side. What the clarity is going to do is it's more of a bell. So the air knob was more of a shelf, but now I'm going to emphasize more on that 10 kilohertz range to give me some more of that sheen and intelligence in the vocal. Just a little bit of it. Let's see what it sounds like. I can't get over you. It's so hard to start over with somebody new. I feel like this conversation is overdue. Cool. So it added some sheen into the vocal and gave it a little bit more brilliance and intelligence, while using it in tandem with the air. It just has a really, really cool, bright, nice, bitey top end that it added to my stuff that's going to help it cut through the mix. Now, granted, I added a lot of this stuff, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to my S's and T's knob on the subtractor side to kind of compensate for all that stuff that I added, just to kind of tame it back just a little bit. I can't get over you. It's so hard to start over with somebody new. So let's emphasize on with somebody new. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep replaying that moment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the S's and T's knob extreme, mess with it a few times. Just pay attention to what it's actually doing. So without first. And then I'll keep playing with it going to the right and taking it out. With somebody new, 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 with somebody new. So you can hear that difference. One hurts. The other is a little bit smoother as far as just bringing those S's and T's down. And this is pretty much attacking that 8,000 kilohertz range, where I'm basically just trying to carve out some space as far as that sibilance range is concerned, because that range as far as that 8,000 hertz is a lot of times where that sibilance will reside. And so I'm taking my S's and T's knob and I'm basically just tweaking it just a bit to say, get out the way, and just using it in moderation. I like the clarity and air I added. I'm probably going to use a de-esser later and push into that de-esser even harder, but at the same time, I'm still trying to back off a little bit on all that EQ I did add to the actual signal by mitigating that just a bit. So it just made it a little easier to listen to and smooth out that S's and T's just a bit in our vocal sound. Okay, so I'm gonna put this back to where it was, which is right about there. And the next thing I'm gonna show you is two knobs. I'm gonna show you the bite knob and the warmth. Now, what I'm going to do is the bite is going to give me this presence that I'm desiring. It's really my favorite knob for when I'm trying to get something to really cut through a particular mix, especially when I'm cleaning up a vocal. Now that I've taken out a bunch of these things and stuff like that and added some high end, now I want to add something in the mid range that is to be desired. So check out what this bite knob does. I feel like this conversation is overdue. 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 So it just gave me a little bit of presence in a sense of, from a frequency standpoint, that wasn't too much. It just kind of added like this kind of grit to the sound. That is what I was looking for when it came to me trying to cut through the mix just a little bit more. I had top end, but now I was looking for something in that mid range to say, okay, I need some bite. I just need something that is going to add some grit to my actual sound source for whatever it is. Now, the last move that we did make while we were here was we added some warmth. Because of all the stuff that I did take out in the bottom, as far as the low cut and the muddy, I liked it, but now I kind of want to bring some of that warmth back into the sound. So let's play with the warmth knob and see what it does. I feel like this conversation is overdue. 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 Great. So added some of that warmth, which is around that, I believe, 100 hertz, where I'm just adding a little bit of that just to give me some roundness and fullness that I probably perhaps took a little bit too much when it came to the low cut, but I'm bringing some of that back. And this is the beauty of this EQ and why I love it so much, is for cleaning up vocals especially. It's allowing me to shape the sound. So as opposed to just seeing that frequency spectrum of your vocal or whatever it is that you're trying to clean up and saying boost there, okay, I'm not going to even go back over here. I'm going to start to play with this range. Instead, now that you're not even seeing that, you're not realizing that you're really shaping the vocal, where you add some of the bite presence or the bite knob to this particular place, but then you go on over to, say for instance, the tuck knob, and it's going around that EQ section and pulling it down just a little bit. You're shaping EQ, and it's kind of tough to do that or to put yourself in that mindset when you're just looking at this visual sometimes. So I like to use this EQ for cleaning up vocals because it helps me make cooler decisions or better decisions, or decisions that I probably wouldn't make if I had my visual EQ that I pretty much go to all the time in front of me. I use this to kind of shape the sound. It is my favorite EQ for when it comes to shaping, because I'm literally just using my ears and nothing else. And so we get a product that sounds something like this. I feel like this conversation is overdue. And it sounds really, really cool. Now, what I'm going to do is, for the last part, I'm just going to bypass the Rosetta EQ back and forth. Let's take a listen to what we accomplished without first. I can't get over you. It's
like this conversation is overdue. Know you feel this way cause I've been stalking you. Your IG and my friends.
A vocal sound that's a lot cleaner. Of course, it still needs work. I can hear things that I need to fix, but nonetheless, it puts me in a better place, and it's easy, super functional, and just it's fun to use, plain and simple. So I hope that that was helpful. Please make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. Also, remember the HMD Rosetta EQ is at helpmedevon.com if you want to grab it. Please, it would really help us so much. I appreciate your support. Also, please follow us at Help Me Devvon. And also, I want you guys to listen to the My Audio Nerds podcast every Wednesday. New episodes come out on this channel. And also, make sure you join our Discord community with a bunch of aspiring engineers like yourself. I really hope that that was helpful. And until next time, you guys.